there's one thing that the MCU has taught us recently, it's that a lot of people seem to be satisfied with the bare minimum. Or worse, they feel an obligation to defend it. Let's discuss. Our content sucks. Our content sucks. Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So Black Panther Wakanda Forever has been getting talked about and hyped up for weeks now, like most MCU movies do. I already saw people praising it for tackling themes of grief and guilt. And I'm here to tell you that this movie does in fact do that. But those themes are only really surface deep and are covered in the most simplistic way possible. The MCU effect is in play once again. Mediocrity inspires praise.
That's bait.
But here's the biggest thing for me. As I was watching Wakanda Forever, I thought back to what made the original Black Panther connect with so many different people on so many different levels. And I think a big reason why it did was that it was the perfect combination of things and people to come together at the perfect time, and it happened when audiences really needed it to, and it became a pop culture phenomenon because of it. And in my mind, it was mostly built off the back of the perfect casting of Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther or T'Challa.
That makes sense.
He resonated with people from the first time you saw him in Civil War because of the way he carried himself as this character. We all knew instantly that he was born to play this role, and he did so in a way that it was difficult for most people to see anyone replicating that success in the same role. What Marvel Studios is trying to do with Wakanda Forever is capture lightning in a bottle for the second time. And in my opinion, they completely failed at doing so.
We don't do that here.
A lot of praise is going to be heaped on this movie because of how it quote-unquote tugs at your heartstrings, which is obviously a very effective tactic most times. But all I've heard is what a great tribute this movie is to Chadwick Boseman. But if I'm being honest, which I always am, after watching it for myself, I honestly don't think they paid tribute to him enough. In fact, I was underwhelmed by the tributes that mostly just bookended this movie. In my mind, Chadwick Boseman deserves better, Black Panther deserves better, and basically what Marvel Studios did was give us, again, the bare minimum.
Fuck you!
Now, I understand that the filmmakers were in a difficult position carrying this franchise on without Chadwick Boseman, and I do commend them for their efforts, and all the failures shouldn't really be piled at their feet. To me, this has always been more of a Disney problem than it is the people who are working for them. And to be clear, no, I did not want a 2-hour funeral scene. But I would have preferred something a bit more inspired. Even the tribute to Chadwick Boseman just seemed a bit glossed over and over before I even realized it had begun.
Are you done?
Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther should have been the future of the MCU. He was going to be the character that filled the void left by the departure of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. Yet somehow it felt like those characters had a better send-off in Endgame than Chadwick Boseman got in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But why? Now, I don't know 100% what the right direction was to go in, but to me, what they ended up doing with this character missed the mark by a lot. Which brings me to T'Challa's replacement, who I will not name here because this is a spoiler-free review, but a lot of you already know who this person is. To be clear, I never once felt like this person was the correct choice to replace T'Challa, and that was purely based on how this person was presented to us in the MCU, which is what I'm told is all that matters. Comics do not matter in this situation, right?
Let's gut the freaking nerd.
And even in this film, it doesn't really feel like this character does anything to earn the mantle of Black Panther. It almost feels like they get it by default. This is especially weird because there are other, more worthy characters in this movie that would have made a lot more sense. After taking it all under consideration, maybe recasting T'Challa wouldn't have been such a bad idea. Just saying. And by the way, I want to bring up Lupita Nyong'o for a moment, who is very talented and completely underutilized in this movie. She deserves better as well. Her character might as well have not even been there, based on what they were giving her to work with. This has become a new trend in the MCU as well, taking talented actors and completely misusing them. We saw it with Christian Bale, and now we're seeing it with Lupita as well.
Because it's all part of the plan.
And now we move on to the elephant in the room, that being the introduction of the MCU's version of Namor, or in this case, Namor. A lot of people gave me shit about my very tame thoughts on this character, and about this change that I wasn't even really against to begin with. From the start, I was always taking a wait-and-see approach, even if people chose to ignore that. Sometimes these changes work, and sometimes they do not. And in this case, now that I've seen the changes in action for myself, I honestly think that it's one of the worst character introductions in recent memory. They could have created this character, he could have been an MCU exclusive, and they could have called him anything else, but he does not look, act, or feel like Namor.
Then why the fuck didn't you say so?
The MCU has this god-awful talent, especially lately, of taking the most powerful and godlike characters and making them look like regular people for some reason. Namor just didn't feel like a big deal to me in this movie in the way that he should. Even the way that he talks and the way that he carries himself. It just didn't scream this divine entity that I should be taking seriously. He looked very out of place in this movie, especially considering he's leading an army of Avatar-esque blue people.
A what?
Which I thought was honestly kind of a strange creative choice. Even his powers seemed somewhat dwarfed to me. There was one moment where he felt somewhat legit, where he threatens Wakanda and even invades Wakanda just to get them to see things in the way that he does. But the rest of the time, he's pretty much portrayed as this stoic, emotionless, boring character. Which could work for the character, I suppose, but the writing and the dialogue do fail him quite a bit.
This is whack! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
As I already stated, it's not about the changes, it's about how those changes are executed. Not to mention, all I heard was how this character was going to be very important culturally, because he gives certain audience members someone now to look up to. Well, I got news for you, he's a bit more than an anti-hero in this film. He's actually much more of a murderous villain than I was expecting. Granted, he's doing it for his people. In his eyes, that's the right thing to do. But even if you have the best intentions, that does not excuse villainous behavior. So I'm not sure the new Namor is turning out to be the role model that everyone expected him to be.
No shit.
Also, the climax of this movie, which features a battle between the new Black Panther and Namor, it was honestly pretty underwhelming, and the conclusion of it doesn't do much to make Namor look like a formidable character moving forward. I'll just leave it at that. Even his home world, which they had complete creative freedom to create. They kind of swapped out this bright and visually stunning Atlantis for a dark and dingy cave city, which wasn't visually interesting at all.
Whoopie fucking do. Hey, I'm impressed.
Everything about it was just so monotone and boring, like most of the movie actually. I don't hide the fact that I'm pretty checked out of the superhero genre at this point, but honestly it wouldn't take much for them to get me reinvested. All they have to do is put in a little bit of effort. It won't happen though, because these movies have become about everything except telling us a good story and giving us a good time.
Why do these things always happen to me?
This was an average story about the importance of vibranium and how resources like it cause strife between different nations. I mean, stop me if you've heard that before. Christ, you might as well have just brought in unobtainium and did an Avatar crossover. At least the blue people would have made a lot more fucking sense. And by the way, yes, once again, they gloss over Namor's origin as well as the origin of his people. Pretty much like the modern MCU has also been accustomed to doing.
No, don't like that.
Oh, and by the way, if anyone still reads modern Marvel comics, which why would you? Iron Man's replacement was also introduced in this movie, and Riri Williams was about as forgettable of a character as she is in the comics. She feels like the literal MacGuffin of this movie. One side wants to kill her, one side wants to save her. So one side has to get to her before the other side does. It's literally as basic as you can possibly get. Oh, and we get a glimpse of her Bionicle-inspired suit that looks like a dollar store knockoff with the CGI to match. Absolutely terrible design.
That's right, it stinks!
I was hard-pressed to find positives in this movie, but there are a handful. Angela Bassett is always great in everything that she does, and she pretty much carries this movie. I also really enjoyed Okoye in this movie, even though she does pretty much disappear halfway through it. In reality, thinking back now, she probably would have made a great Black Panther, especially if you're comparing her to what we got. At least she's believable in a fight.
I'm gonna go pick a fight.
This movie bored me to fucking tears, and honestly, I couldn't wait for it to be over. At 2 hours and 41 minutes, it is truly a chore to sit through. I spent most of the time uninterested and underwhelmed, and in general just feeling nothing. That's why Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the latest MCU movie to get the careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care! Y'all be cool. Right on.